Good evening and welcome to tonight's episode of Sports Scene. I'm joined here by Elijah Levette.
Yes, thanks for having me.
Good night, Elijah. How are you?
I'm good, I'm good.
It was a busy weekend.
Yes, it was a lot of sporting activities here in the nation's capital.
Yes, now you covered the national softball titles.
Yes, I did at the Bisini Sports Complex.
The new sporting complex.
Yeah, the new one.
Just tell us a bit about the titles that occurred over the weekend.
The softball national titles is held every year in April, the Easter period.
Okay.
But this year it was held after the Pacific Games because of, facilities and stuff like that. But next year they'll be hosting it here again in Port Moresby during Easter, and they're hoping for more provinces that have their softball association to take part in these softball titles.
Cool. So you had a couple of visiting teams. I mean, one visiting team as well,
Yeah, one
didn't they?
visiting team from Canberra, the Canberra Giants. Cool. Yeah, they actually came up here and they gave a good run to some of the teams here.
Okay, we'll just take a look at the 2015 National Softball titles.
The crowd turned up in numbers to support their teams. In the women's finals, Port Moresby Gold reclaimed their standings as champions, beating Medang in the finals. This year's championships saw the inclusion of a visiting Canberra Giants and Manus team. Both teams have shown interest to bring more teams for next year's tournament.
Yeah, we have interest because we said we were coming up, and we picked up New South Wales player in Jaden Latch, and then we also picked up Queensland player in Ryan Merriman. So we've got the ACT boys, a couple of them are Australian juniors, and all under the age of 20, and playing against quite older boys here, and stealing bases and being aggressive is different.
Our participation this year has stimulated interest, and definitely we will come back. But this time we will try and bring our women to participate as well.
After the men's grand final, trophies were presented to outstanding players of the tournament, including the winning teams. The following national softball titles are to be held next year during Easter in Port Moresby, with the hopes of more teams taking part.
Great stuff there. It looks like it was a successfully run national titles.
Yeah. Tournament director
Ralph
Tarasomo, yeah, he actually had a few things to say about the tournament as well, as you saw. And the Manus team, the newcomers as well, they said they were going to bring the women's team next year.
So this time around they only came with the men's team.
Yeah, and they also said, their first time here, it was a good experience for them.
Probably a learning curve.
Yeah.
Just getting used to it. And next, I'm sure they'll be very competitive in the next coming titles.
Yeah.
So definitely something to watch for. What did you enjoy the most about being out there and watching softball?
Well, I actually enjoyed it, but I was scared at the same time.
Why?
Because they'll hit the ball, and then you actually have to take cover.
And where were you guys standing?
We actually went all around.
Okay.
So yeah.
So you guys were taking cover.
Yes. We were.
So Elijah was a bit scared at the softball field.
I'm not scared.
Frightened, terrified. Okay, we'll just take a quick break and we'll be back with more of Sports Scene. And welcome back to the show. Now happy to introduce Shane. Well, Shane doesn't really need an introduction. But Shane, this weekend also featured the Southern Region Athletics Championships. So can you just tell me a bit about that?
Yeah, Dion, the Southern Regional Championships was started on Friday and ended yesterday. The regional championship now brought together various athletes from around the Southern region, especially Western and Oro. They came as far as Western and Oro to compete. And yeah, the athletics competition itself consists of the under 14, under 16, and the under 18. So it's mainly when we're talking about the school, primary and secondary students competing in that division. But we also have the open division, which we have our senior athletes competing. So it's actually an exciting time for athletes around the Southern Region tournament to actually come out there and show their potential in the sport.
Now, with a lot of, like you mentioned that there were a lot of primary and secondary students, now, was there a lot of really good talent that you saw out there?
Definitely, definitely. Now on the tracks, we have, also it's also good to see our top athletes, like for instance, Mike Koime, Toya Whistle, Nelson Stones. They were out there on the track to help out and
and encourage the youngsters.
And encourage the youngsters. So it was pretty good. And actually, it all started. Mike Koime and Toya Whistle, they came out on such competitions like this. But during their time, they competed in. We didn't have that kind of facility to actually help them boost their training level and But now we have Sir John Guy's world-class stadium, and it
was probably a privilege for them to be able to compete on a world-class surface like the Sir John Guys, and having this facility available for young and upcoming runners will encourage them to want to perform. So what was the standout thing for you that you saw out there on the tracks?
Okay, the standout thing for me, I'd say the young kids that ran barefooted on the track. It was actually good to see young children, actually getting there and get involved. Barefooted, and some of them ran without shoes, just a pair of socks and everything. It was funny, but
shows the true love for wanting to be able to actually compete. And we'll just take a look at all the action from the Southern Region Athletics Championships.
The young athletes competed in the under 14, under 16, and under 18, and also the open divisions, which consist of older runners. The competition brought out few of PNG's top athletes to help out on the tracks.
South Pacific Games na yumika all specialty lo here lo back home. Some me all senior athletes good to come back na helping all kind of same just by motivating all young ones lo not from now but in future lo when a man if all coaches like some like experienced all coaches na this like and they can come and give something back back to where experience belong all na second. But it's good that some of us are here, and it was really good for see my Koime and them coming back and helping out and give something back to athletics, and it's a good thing.
NCD was very strong on the tracks in day 1 and 2, as well as long jump and javelin, with other events such as discus and high jump equally contested by other centers. Speaking with PNG and Pacific Games long jump and high jump gold medalist Relly Kaputin, who was also present, she said it was encouraging to see such competition as potential future athletes can be identified.
I think there's some very talented athletes at the moment from Kokopo and Kavieng, and also like Kimbe and those other provinces. So I think if all are gonna compete, I think they'll give like much big competition. But I see these guys too, like all go compete good stuff. So I think it will be just the same.
Awesome stuff there. Now, Dion, I forgot to mention to you earlier on, we'll also have the NGI Regional Championship, and that is coming up on the 21st to the 28th of September. Now, it will be held at Kavieng. And also that will be followed after by the Momase and the Highlands Regional Championship. And that will be held up at the Goroka National Sports Institute. So exciting times for athletics here in the country.
Now, with our athletes doing extremely well, especially the up-and-coming runners during the Pacific Games, do you think that with the current facilities available now and with the programs that they have, do you think athletics is just going to take another big step forward?
Yeah, definitely, Dion. Now, with the facilities that we have, that's a major step forward for our athletes. We've been sending our athletes to train overseas. Actually, that's cost a lot of money for our PNG Sports Foundation as a whole. But with the facilities that we had now, we probably have our best athletes training Papua New Guinea instead of going abroad. Yeah.
So it should very exciting times for athletics, and a lot of interesting things to look forward to, especially in athletics. So do stay with us as we take a quick break. welcome back to the show. Now, out goes Shane and in comes Jeremy.
Thank you, Dion. Great to be back here.
As I mentioned, as Elijah and I mentioned earlier in the show, a lot of things actually, a lot of sporting events were happening here in the nation's capital. Now, also was the Southern Region Besta Cup, Southern Region leg of the Besta Cup.
Yes, it is actually called the FA Cup Southern Regional Tournament, which is sponsored by Besta. So, you know, in short, everybody calls it the Besta Cup. Yeah. And that was held over at the Bisini Sports Complex.
Okay, so it's really good to see that all these events have been happening, making use of the facilities that were used during the Pacific Games. So it actually...
yes, thank you, everyone. It was a very busy weekend for a lot of us.
So just tell me about the Besta Cup itself.
All right, so I think a couple of weeks back I made mention that it's a tournament that encompasses, you know, all the different soccer associations here in the country. For the Southern Region, they had 12 men's teams and 7 women's teams, and they came from the Ora Province. This is Higaturu. Also from the Western Province, it was Tabubil that popped over, as well as from the Central Province. And the big surprise, honestly, one of the teams that I was impressed with was the Kaupa Soccer Association. Now, they sent 3 teams. That's Kaupa 1, Kaupa 2, Kaupa 3. Kaupa 1 had PNG international striker and Hekari striker Kema Jack.
Yes,
his team got knocked out.
Oh, his team did.
They didn't qualify for the semi-finals, but in the semi-finals itself, it was Kaupa 2 and Kaupa 3.
Wait,
and
Kaupa 1 didn't make it through, and
Kaupa
2.
1 did not make it, Kaupa 2 did, as well as Kaupa 3.
Wow.
This is in the men's pool, and they took on in-city Public Servant Soccer Association, which is a feeder to Hekari.
Oh, okay.
And they had PNG captain David Muta, they had PNG defender Koreako Paiga, they had PNG defender Daniel
And they were
Cho,
defeated
they had
by-
a former PNG defender in Brian Tuyana.
And they were defeated by?
And they were defeated 3-2 in the semi-finals yesterday, Sunday afternoon, by, Kaupa 2.
Kaupa 2. Wow.
After that game, however, was the match between Kaupa 3 and the Port Moresby Soccer Association. Now, PMSA has supplied a lot of players to the NSL. So there were 1 or 2 familiar faces that I saw, about 3, I think, spread out. And PMSA had 2 teams. Now, PMSA 1, which was the more experienced side, also didn't qualify.
Okay.
And it was the development squad that did. And they took on Kaupa 3. Now that game was really, really exciting for me to watch. Why? Because Kaupa 3 took the lead. It was 1-0, and then it was 1-1, and then it was 2-1, and then it was 2-2.
Contest.
And then in the first 5 minutes of the second half, it was Kaupa 3 that were leading PMSA 4-2. Now the match had to be called off due to lighting. I think they also had some supporter issues yesterday. But the final score, well, the score by then had been PMSA 5, Kaupa 4. So such a seesaw tournament. Now, over in the women's, not really that many surprises. It is really public servants and Port Moresby Soccer Association. It's NCD, PSSA.
Port Moresby-based teams.
Yes, both Port Moresby-based teams that are in.
We'll just take a quick look at all the action from the Besta Cup.
The women from the country's biggest football association, PMSA, didn't waste any time showing their dominance early, and their first goal came in the 3rd minute. They would soon double that lead and triple it a few minutes after. And by half-time, it was PMSA 5, Higaturu 0. Other results in the competition had Kaupa 2 beat Nawane by 6-2. Higaturu beating Loa Sogeri by 4-1, and Kaupa 1 in the women's division trashing the NCD Public Servant Soccer Association by 5-1. Perhaps some of the biggest surprises have come from the Kaupa Association in the Rigo district, and they'll be up against the likes of PMSA and PSSA in the men's division. PMSA, as expected, have been highly consistent, having gained 10 points over 4 matches that included a 1-1 draw against Kaupa 2. The association has fielded 2 teams in both men's pools and both look set to cruise to the semi-finals. Kaupa 2, for that matter, have been in scintillating form, scoring 14 goals in only 3 matches, including a 7-1 victory over Hekari. The NCD Public Servant Soccer Association has also been strong. Coach Eriksson Komeng has done well, and his charges have also been performing highly to expectation with 3 wins, scoring a lot of goals along the way. In the women's division, again, few surprises. Both NCD, PSSA and PMSA are still the favorites. They do have another contender to deal with, though, in the likes of Tabubil, who opened their campaign with a 6-0 victory. So far, after 2 days, the tournament is still largely open, and unless there are surprises, it is expected there will be few changes along the way. Well, after 2 days of competition, the teams have been whittled down to the Final 4 in both the men's and the women's division. In the women's, no surprises when PMSA beat Tabubil by 4-1 to book their spot in the grand final on Monday afternoon. But it was in the men's where the big surprise came about. Kaupa team number 2 beating NCD Public Servant Soccer Association by 3-2. Right now behind me is the second semi-finals between Port Moresby Soccer Association and Kaupa 3. It might sound confusing, but there are actually 3 different teams that were sent over from the Kaupa Soccer Association in the Rigo district. And the Kaupa Soccer Association have just scored their second goal to take a 2-1 lead against Port Moresby Soccer Association in the second of the semi-finals over here at the Bisini Sports Complex down in Port Moresby. And the final scores, or the current scores, sorry, are Kaupa 2, PMSA 1.
It was a good turnout there. I saw a pretty good number of people.
Well, it was really, really noisy as well.
Yeah, the crowd was pretty loud, and not too many people, but they were loud. Now, just tell me a bit about the player eligibility in order to be able to compete in this tournament. I heard
okay, so I took a look at the competition rules, and one of the most interesting facets of that was mainly about player eligibility. Now, each association that fields players has to have players that have played with that particular association.
Oh, okay.
There were issues raised by Port Moresby Soccer Association in the sense that they had some of their players playing with other associations. Yeah.
Okay, I see.
That was number one, and it might not seem like much, but at the end of the day, in order for a competition to run well, these rules are set as guidelines that have to be followed.
That's true.
The second one was about the number of NSL players that are allowed to play
in one particular team.
Okay.
How many was that? Was the maximum?
Well, at any one time, you can have 3 NSL players playing in that first 11.
Same team. Yeah.
But you can have a total of 5 players.
Oh, okay.
So if you want to
3 at a time on the field.
But 3 at a time
okay.
on the field. So there were a bit of concerns back and forth raised by not just PMSA, but a couple of the other associations as well. But at the end of the day, when I came back from the Moraba province, I did make mention that I was really impressed with the Mamose competition. The players from Medang, players from Situ Menelefe, Lahi, all of these associations, and the ones that came out from more rural areas. But then watching these Rigo players, and
Southern region had their own as well.
Well, they have a totally different style of playing, and for the teams from PMSA and NCD Public Servants, I think they struggled a bit to counter against these teams. Yeah.
So your overall thought on the whole competition?
I like it. I think we need more of it, and I also feel that we need maybe a qualifying tier.
Okay.
Because what's happening right now is you've got some really, really strong teams, and then you've got teams like Loa Sogeri, for example. They've been taking part for about 9 years now. Their players are still developing. And perhaps what should happen is that you have a qualifying competition first to the best towards the regional, and then from there you can then qualify for the national.
It doesn't kill the hopes of the teams that are still developing.
Yes, because what's the use of training so hard and then you just get trashed by 6 or 7-0? Because Port Moresby Soccer Association, in their opening match, they trashed, I think it was Higaturu by 12-0.
I see what you mean. Well, that's just about it. Jeremy, thank you very much for your time.
Thank you very much,
Dion. What else is happening in football that our viewers can look out for?
Well, word that I've recently received is that we might have an African team coming here to take on our PNG under 20 girls in preparation for the World Cup next year.
That's right. Under 20.
Yes, the under 20 Women's World Cup, which we have qualified for. Also, the Pacific leg of qualification is happening. That's internationally, locally. I think the next big event is, of course, still the Besta Cup, but this time heading over to the Highlands region.
Awesome, awesome stuff to look forward to. We'll just take a quick break right now, and we'll be back with more of Sports Scene. Welcome back to the show. Elijah, you came back.
Yes, I'm back here again.
We couldn't get rid of you that easily. Now, on Friday, you actually took a road trip. Where'd you go?
I went down to Kairuku for the Kilahawada Cup boxing tournament that was held down there.
Now, Kairuku people are known as really good boxers. They produce some of the country's best boxers who are really competitive and did extremely well during the Pacific Games.
These boxers, the ones from Mekeo, like Philo MacGyver, Jonathan, Charlie Keama. They're all become like role models to these boxers here, and they actually look up to these people and maybe one day represent the country.
Now, what was the level of competition like, for boxing?
It was actually good. There were some boxers from that area that took part in the PNG games as well. There were some other representatives that flew down for like the Arafura games as well that actually stay there. And
so there's a bit of experience
in
there. Okay. And what was your general view on the competition?
Oh, they actually are working on having more people to come in and help them to develop the boxers and all that. So they were, they actually brought on the national coach, Joe Alpha, who took them for some training, for some workshop as well.
I just firstly want to say thank you to the Kapa executive and also the chiefs of this village, which is Veva village. All the chiefs will organize the 48th independence as well as conjunction with the boxing tournament, which is the Governor's Cup. My duty is to come down and see. I was running a 2 days workshop here before the boxing starts, just to boxing basic coaching course here in Veva village, which is to see the coaches, how they advance. And we are all following the IBA, and I want the coaches to advance and to lift the standard up, and also lift the technical officials also, as well as to train the new skills, where a lot of new skills are coming, as we all see at the Pacific Games. Like the boxing here back in the Kaba Association is a very big name, but the technical officials and the coaches, a lack of experience, were taking the boxers up to the ring. That's why my job come down to give them some refresher course to maintain their duties, what to do, and the roles like that.
So a lot to look forward to, and I'm sure they'll be really competitive in maybe the next coming years or so. Also, what's happening is the NRL goes into the finals in the coming next weekend. Who's in the finals? Roosters will go up against the Broncos, and the Cowboys take on the Melbourne Storm. Both games are they're both fighting out for a spot in the 2015 NRL Grand Final. So it should be really interesting and exciting. Also, our Hunters ended their Super Cup campaign yesterday.
But
a tad bit disappointing, but a huge step forward from finishing 6th last year and now finishing 3rd. Full credit to the boys, and they deserve a round of applause.
Yes, they do.
Also, the Rugby World Cup kicked off over the weekend, and the biggest upset came
so far.
The biggest upset so far. Japan defeated
South Africa.
Japan defeated South Africa 34 points to 32. Such a thrilling match. We watched a slight bit of it, and Japan were just, that last try sealed the match for them.
they were all crying. They were all speechless.
A massive win for Japan. They're not known as a rugby nation, and to defeat one of the powerhouses and former two-time world champions, it was just a great win for them. That should bring us to the end of the show before we take up too much time. Thank you very much for your company. Thank you, Elijah.
Thanks.
And also Jeremy and Shane. Thank you very much once again. You have a pleasant evening. Good night.